Okay, well, good evening, everybody. We just had a few technical difficulties at the start, but I think we are now good to go. Rachel's here and some of her team are here as well. Thanks very much for coming along. I think we've got about 25 people at the moment, and I'm guessing people may join a little late as well. This is one of the, this is archaeology lectures that the CBA is laying on. This season, maybe it's going to be an ongoing longer term initiative. They've been very well attended so far, I gather, and a really great range of talks as well around that subject of how we define archaeology and its purpose and role in contemporary society. My name is John Schofield. I'm chairing this talk this evening. I'm a lecturer at the University of York, where I supervised Rachel's PhD a number of years ago now. I'm also now a trustee of the CBA as well, so I'm here with both of those hats on, really. So it is a great pleasure to introduce Rachel. Many of you will know her already or will know of her work, either the work that she's going to talk about tonight or her previous work on with homeless communities in Bristol and in York. She is still currently, I think, a postdoc at Oxford, but she's about to start a new job as a lecturer at the University of Cambridge, teaching heritage studies there. And I think that starts at the start of the next academic year. So Rachel's in transition at the moment from postdoc to lecturer. Very excited to hear her talk this evening. We've got a 45-minute talk. We'll have about 15 minutes for questions at the end. The questions you can put into the Q&A. If they do end up in the chat, then CBA staff will move them across into the Q&A, and I will deal with the questions at the end after the talk has concluded. So having said all of that, I'm going to hand over to Rachel. I know it's Rachel and others this evening, so I'm going to let Rachel introduce the rest of the team, but I'm going to introduce Rachel to you and let her share her screen and talk about her project, which is the Maiden Migration Collective, and it's a talk about the work that she's currently doing on that. So Rachel, over to you.
Thank you. I'm just going, hello everybody, and thank you very much for coming. I'm just going to try and find the right part of my, there we go, now I can do screen share. Yeah, thanks very much to CBA for inviting us to do this. I'm just going to say a really quick thank you and then talk to you about the format. So I'll just talk a little bit about the context of the research. But before I do that, I was going to ask Hassan and Ala, who are two members of the Maiden Migration Collective who could join us this evening, to introduce themselves briefly. Then I'll talk a bit about the sort of background to the research. The Maiden Migration Collective is a coalition of displaced and non-displaced people. We come from diverse cultural and educational backgrounds, and the collective developed from my British Academy funded postdoc fellowship, which I held at the School of Archaeology, University of Oxford between 2018 and earlier this year. So I'm actually one of the great unemployed currently, and then I'll start a teaching associate role at Cambridge in September. In tonight's talk, we really want to prioritise the achievements of the collective so far, and hear from other members of the collective, not just me. So I'll just briefly ask, I don't know if Hassan was driving back from somewhere. Hassan, are you able to introduce yourself just briefly, to switch on your camera and say hi? I think maybe he's busy getting into his house. Oh, here we go. I think you're muted, Hassan.
Hello, this is Hassan, and I live now in Sweden. I work as technician. I work actually, and I'm sorry to be late.
No worries, Hassan. I think we'll come back to you because you've gone a bit sort of robotish. Ala, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Ala Al-Rustam. I'm cartoonist. I working in independent Arabia, and I live in Stockholm.
Thank you, Ala. We can't see you. Can you switch your camera on, please?
Camera. Excuse me.
No problem.
I think.
Don't worry, we can come back. It would be good.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be good if we can see you. Anyway, so Ala is, if you can see my screen now, Ala is top right. Hassan is, sorry, top left. Hassan is bottom left. In the middle is Ferrous, who I think will join us maybe. And then on the right, we have Dufla at the top, who can't join us because he had his wife had a baby today. So he's busy looking after their other two small children and looking after his wife and their very, very new baby. And Gunel sadly can't join us because she's not very well. But these are some of our collective members. So I'll just talk a little bit about the background to the research and then come back to Hassan and Ala, who can talk about their contribution to the various exhibitions that we've done together. So first of all, there's plenty of different social scientific disciplines that look at contemporary displacement, migration, anthropology, refugee studies, politics, economics. Why would we take an archaeological approach? Well, archaeologists are really good at looking at the things that other people overlook. In many ways, we look at rubbish, we find the stuff that's left behind. And often this is the stuff that people think is meaningless. This is one of the reasons it gets left behind. So in this way, as archaeologists, we can often, particularly working in the contemporary, document those things that authorities seek to erase or hide or pretend didn't happen. By documenting human and social material displacement of people and things, often caused by human-made conflicts and climate chaos, for example, this research attempts to use archaeology to challenge Western myths about the past and to identify different forms of tangible and intangible heritage, and to harness these things, these surviving narratives, as a form of advocacy. And so in this way, it can bring people together in non-hierarchical ways, and it can form projects that are focused on solidarity and recovery. And I really hope that it can help archaeological community heritage of this type, can hope to show that there are clear alternatives to global capitalism and growing inequality. In terms of how I went about this work, at the start of the research in 2018, I wanted to make sure that I was working with displaced people, not on displaced people or trying to speak for them. And so I'm an academic, I'm an archaeologist with an interest in displacement, but I've never lived that experience. And displaced people are the real experts in the ontological realities of fleeing their homes to find safety in other parts of the world. So at the very start of my research, when I first got the funding, I sought to volunteer and work and hang out in places where I would meet displaced people. And this was in 2018. So I was volunteering and working in camps and squats and day centres and services located in Greece, in Athens, in Sweden and in the UK. And initially I had planned to work in Serbia, but COVID-19 sort of put the kibosh on that, sadly. But these were all places used and created by displaced people. I was very clear with everyone that I was a researcher working on the material culture of displacement. And very gradually over time, our collective began to take shape. We used a blend of documentary methods, so photography, drawing, ethnographic interviews, memory mapping, and collaboratively documented these places and personal belongings, which constitute lived experiences of displacement in contemporary Europe. At the start of the project, we had intended to hold an 8-day-long collaborative interpretation workshop in Oxford, where we were planning to come together as people, but also that people were going to bring various objects with them. And together we were going to amass all these maps and objects and things and talk about them and co-interpret them to create a live exhibition. So I spent 6 months prior to March 2020 helping everyone who was not UK based to get visitor visas for the UK and sort out travel and accommodation. But sadly, our workshop was due to start on the 23rd of March 2020, which was the exact day that the UK went into the first lockdown. So we had to move all of our work together to a fully online platform, which initially left me thinking, how do you do community archaeology entirely online? But we did. Between March 2020 and June 2021, we met regularly online to reflect on the various images, maps, objects which would have formed the live public exhibition. And other members of our collective, including Dr. Sana Morani, who's an architect at the University of Plymouth, very recently, not now, Bristol City poet Caleb Parkin, and activist filmmaker Owen Assels, including lots more displaced people who previously held positions, professional positions as teachers, journalists, lawyers, human rights activists, a literary agent, a psychologist, an engineer. So combining all of these diverse skills and experiences, we used these mixed methods to reflect on the data where we were. So people living in their house wherever they were in Europe, or living in a camp wherever they were, reflected on what they had and what they would have brought, using a mix of creative writing, memory mapping, filmmaking, in order to create digital exhibits. And through this, we were able to co-create and curate a virtual exhibition called Maiden Migration, which launched during Refugee Week in 2021. So you can still visit. I'm going to show you briefly, and then I'll pass on to Hassan and Ala to talk, but you can still see the virtual exhibition if you go to this link here at the bottom of the screen here. So I now need to stop sharing to be able to open this link and go and then share again here. Let me double check. Sorry, momentary. And go to this one. This is it. Then I need to share the screen again, and I can take you in. So this has got some music. If it's too loud, wave at me and I'll switch it off. But this is basically the digital online exhibition that we created. We filmed. This was in the peak of lockdown, so just before the winter lockdown in the UK in 2020. I borrowed the space from PRSC, which is a kind of community organisation I did a lot of work with in Bristol, and we completely cleared the space, and then we sort of dressed it with various images from our collection of objects and artifacts. And we used suitcases because we used this 3D filming technology. It's called Matterport, and it's most frequently used by estate agents actually to do 3D walks through houses and flats. But in order to use that technology, we had to have actual objects in the space that we could pin a point to. So I'll show you now. So this is what you get when you go in. You can choose whether to view it as a doll's house or a floor plan. This is the list of everything. This is the list of everything in the exhibition, and each dot represents a different artifact or a different bit of information or a map or a film. So for example, I'll just pick one at random, or go to Gunnell's. So this, you then open it up and hang on. And you can see these various different images or pictures that people have created. And you can zoom through the space, seeing all these, they all open up individually as well. Little bookcases. And there are spoken poems. Some of these links take you to poems, films, images with audio over the top. So there's all sorts of different things included. And you can move around the space. So I will now. It's now talking. Shush. I will now come out of that space and hand over to. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to talk to you about Gunel's stuff because she's unable to join us today, unfortunately. So I'll just get back to the right place. You'd think after 2.5 years I'd be slicker at this. There we go. Okay, so this is Gunel's map, and Gunel won't mind me saying she's a single mum from Azerbaijan, and she was actually elected to council, and she said, I'm going to really kind of make women's rights better in Azerbaijan. And people laughed at her and said, you can't do that, it's Azerbaijan. And but essentially some men came to her house and smashed up her computer and USB stick and took files and said, if you're still here tomorrow, we'll do the same to you. So she and her daughter that night packed these 2 suitcases that you can see on her map with just clothes and basic essentials. And she bought return tickets to Heathrow. Gunel speaks 5 languages, but she didn't speak English. But she flew to Heathrow, and when she got to Heathrow said, I'm a refugee. And she was sent to live in Croydon for a while. Then she was sent to Cardiff, 2 places in Cardiff. Then she was sent to Plymouth. Now, Plymouth that's where I met her. Plymouth is a dispersal city, which means that in 2010, the government privatized asylum seeker housing. So whereas previously asylum seekers would be in a town or a city where ordinary local services were involved, you know, the people had a better idea of what was available in terms of healthcare and education and support services and charities and language learning. Whereas now that entire process in the whole of the UK is run by 4 faceless big corporate companies, some of them being Serco and other G4S. The problem with that is that when you are incredibly vulnerable, don't speak the language, and you're trying to work out how to fix your damp flat, it's almost impossible to work out who to call. And Gunel, I think what this map demonstrates quite clearly, she made this with Sana Marani as part of our project. What it demonstrates is that forced displacement in Europe is not a one-way A to B route. Even when you get to your so-called destination, the UK, you get moved around at very short notice. And in Gunel's case, she was moved 8 times in just over a year with her daughter. So of course, everywhere they got to, when they bought small things for the kitchen, small kitchen equipment that they needed, they then had to try and transport everything, which is very expensive and difficult. So she was constantly having to try and settle and then pack up and move, sometimes right across the country, indeed across to Wales and then down to Plymouth. And then even in Plymouth, she moved 5 times. So it's I think what this map shows quite clearly is that forced displacement is not one thing. And also, even when you get to your destination, there's constant immobility and movement and uncertainty and precarity that people have to deal with. Luckily now, Gunel has got a permanent council house in Plymouth, which is the bottom picture, the one with the yellow wall and a little cat. And her daughter's at school and doing really well, and they're now on track. She's still not able to practice as a human rights lawyer because she hasn't got the UK qualification to do that. So she explained to me quite recently that her biggest ambition now is to be able to improve her English so that she can pass her legal exams to practice as a lawyer again. Ala, are you ready to talk about your contribution? Ala? Can you hear me, Ala? Ala? Okay, I don't know what's happened to Ala. Shall we go straight to you, Hassan? Are you ready?
Can you give me 10
Ah.
minutes? 10
Hey.
minutes, please. Thank you.
Okay,
I
Hassan.
hear you. I hear you. I hear
Okay,
you.
are you ready to
Rachel.
talk about your pictures?
Exactly.
Great.
Yeah. And I have more cartoons. And I draw these cartoons about immigration, about what's happened in Syria because of the war, and what's happened with the refugees in UK, and like these cartoons as you see, Boris Johnson, what's happened with the refugees, like British government send them to Rwanda, and I trying to say what's suffering like refugees have in Syrian and Ukrainian also because of the war. And I worked hard when we had a workshop with Rachel, and I have a lot of information about this important things about immigration. And like you see, the word don't say this a big problem about refugees. Like the word I draw, the word like man, and he jumped over the refugees and refugees in the sea. And I try my best to saying this about this important like refugees and immigration.
Thank you.
I hope so I hope so to try to draw more cartoons.
Did you mention that you are now you're the cartoonist for the independent Al Arabiya?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's a real pleasure to have Ala and everyone in our collective. It's a real pleasure to work with Ala, and we will talk a little bit at the end, but one of the things that we are trying to demonstrate in including Ala's cartoons is to try and bust through the myth that everyone who needs to come and live in Europe is going to be a drain on Europe's resources. Actually, we can, within our own small team, we have lawyers, we have teachers, we have cartoonists, we have lots of people with a lot of skills and talent. So that's one of the things that we're trying to demonstrate through including these pictures. Because Hassan needs a little bit more time, to get in, I'll just talk about Dufla's work that he was going to talk about. So here we have on the right-hand side a page from Dufla's diary, and I was really fascinated to when I met Dufla he's originally from Eritrea, and I met him in rural Sweden, and he told me a little bit about why he had to escape Eritrea, and basically he and 19 other young men escaped by boat across the Red Sea from Eritrea to Yemen. When they got to Yemen, the Yemeni had nowhere to put them. So they had to put them in a prison. They hadn't done anything wrong, but they had to be in a prison. And Dufla was explaining this to me and saying it was awful. You know, we had to do hard work to earn enough money to buy our food, but also we were incarcerated with people who were violent and very ill, and it was a very scary place to be incarcerated. And he actually said, which I find quite haunting, that he was the only person who could write and speak in English. And he said that since he's been settled in Sweden, he's now had these nightmares where he's imagined, if none of us could speak and write in English, what would have happened to us? We might still be there. Because he was writing to the UNHCR, and this page from his diary is one of his practice pages, where he was trying to get the English right to put in the letter. And I was intrigued because I said to him, but why did you write it in English? Why is your whole diary written in English? And he said, because if you want the world to hear you, you have to write in English. So I think it demonstrates a lot about the kind of colonial, the way in which language itself is a very kind of colonial tool. And then on the left-hand side is his map, which I think is really wonderful because he's in Arabic. He writes in Arabic, and the map doesn't read like a sort of it doesn't read in a particularly Western friendly way. It reads from down to up, which Dufla explained to me as well. I was moving from south to the north, so that's my map, that's why it goes up. And he has it's quite difficult to see on a screen here, I apologize for that, but he has some very specific dates and very specific timings, and this is because he actually came through the UNHCR, so he knew exactly which date he traveled, and he knew exactly how long various stops took. But yeah, he went from this Yemeni prison, and finally the UNHCR program picked them up, and Dufla was moved to Sweden, where he now has refugee status, and he's a teacher, and he's very good at skiing. It's a shame he couldn't join us tonight because he's just had a baby, but he would explain eruditely how, you know, he's an Eritrean man who's learning to become a bit Swedish, so his journey is, again, you can see just from these few examples, it's a completely different type of journey to that made by Gunel and her daughter. Hassan, are you ready now?
Yes, I am ready.
Great.
Should I show myself?
Yes, please.
Yes, start my video. Yes, I am Hassan and I am from Syria. I got into Sweden 2015 as a refugee, and I started this project as a member of this project with Rachel. I get to know her when I lived in Sweden, in north of Sweden, in a place called the Stockholm. She visited me in my home with a member of the community there, her name Mimi. So she asked me how my life changed, what I brought with me from my home country. So then I show her this little t-shirt, and this little braille book. And about the t-shirt, This t-shirt have hidden pocket that just fit the passport and little money. So, and I used it because I crossed many countries illegally.
Just to
or
interrupt,
somehow.
Hassan, just to interrupt, the t-shirt in the picture is shown inside out.
Yes, this is yeah, it's hidden pocket. So it's now it's showing outside, but it's actually it was inside. And this little braille book is like a gift from my mom to protect me from the evil or something. So, but I kept it because it's from my mom. And I have other things, like I collect all the train tickets and documents that I given from me from Greece and Serbia and Macedonia. And I brought with me many gigabytes of my picture that I took in Syria.
Thank you, Hassan. Thank you. Is that what you wanted to say?
No, I don't. If there is any specific question, you are welcome to say and I answer it.
Yeah, let's do questions. I'm sure we'll get questions. So we'll let people ask questions and then you can talk more. But just to say that in the digital exhibition, if you go to, there's a bit with Hassan's, he made a really moving film during lockdown when none of us could go anywhere, using lots of individual images from Syria. And he talks about each image is in the shape of the Syrian, is in the shape of the map, but he talks about each image and it's set to music, and it's a very powerful piece, I think. Thank you very much for that, Hassan.
Thank you. Welcome.
I will just this is Ferrous's poem, which is really wonderful, but it's a bit long, so I'm just looking at the time. I think we might you can also see the video of this in our digital exhibition. Ferrous is now 19 or 20, but she was about 16 when I met her. And one of the things we did was working with Caleb Parkin, who was Bristol City poet. He's a professional poet, and he helped us to reflect on textures and smells. And when we think of home, what does it sound like? What does it smell like? What do we eat? And what I love about Ferrous's poem is that it's a real mishmash of Eritrea and Sudan and Sweden, and then as she speaks the poem, you start to get a flavour of how she's learning Swedish at a different rate from her parents. So she talks about how she swears in Swedish, so her parents don't understand, and she talks about well, and her last line is wonderful. It's "My grandfather shot a lion." So I think this demonstrates how when people are forced to move to a different country, they have to sort of wrestle with these different parts of their identity. It's sort of, there's a fusion happening in process. But you're welcome to go and see and hear the poem in our exhibition. So some of us are pictured here. In June this summer, we were able to take a small version of a live exhibition, finally, to London. We were awarded funding from the British Academy and participated in this annual summer showcase. It featured 12 projects that were funded by the Academy, so we were one of those 12 chosen. It was visited by lots of retired and serving MPs, news corporation CEOs, top civil servants, senior people working in the charity and NGO sector. And together we explained our project and the significance of material objects in experiences of displacement, not just in terms of shelter and access to resources, but also the ways in which these small personal objects link people with places and people left behind, in some cases that don't exist and can't be visited. And so the mnemonic sense that the objects carry becomes much, much stronger. Objects help us to orient ourselves in the world. And for people who have to leave almost everything behind and start again, that starting again involves working out new identities. So being Syrian, but also a bit Swedish, or being Eritrean, but also a bit Swedish. It's a complicated and sometimes quite traumatic experience that requires much better understanding and much more empathetic responses. And just in terms of what we're doing next, we are looking for funding to take an extended version of Maiden Migration IRL in real life to tour in Stockholm, because a lot of our collective members are now living in Sweden. And it would be really good to visit people again and find out how they're doing several years on from when we first documented their sort of temporary accommodation. So I'm interested, for example, in how have they learned Swedish, and what are they doing for work, and have their concerns and motivations and ambitions changed since they arrived? And are there things that they would advise to make the process of integration easier for new arrivals? There's a materiality to all of that, which would be really interesting for us to document. We're also hoping to co-produce a cartoon, which Ala will illustrate beautifully for us, which we would hope to explain the process of forced displacement to school-age children. And we also want to try to complicate this story about national borders to show that human beings have always migrated, and immobility, such as we see today in Europe, is a relatively new ideology. It's policed by state-bestowed categories of citizenship. So these are just some of the ideas that our collective is hoping to work with and think about moving forward. So yeah, hopefully that's given you an idea of what we're up to, and we're very happy to receive any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. That was fascinating, and Hassan and Allah as well. Just a wonderful presentation. And I said at the start, this talk comes under the heading of This is Archaeology, CBA initiative. And I mean, for me, of course, you'll know this, but this is very much archaeology, and exactly the kind of work that we should be doing alongside all of the other great work that archaeologists are doing at the moment. But this really is at the cutting edge in so many ways. So great to hear about the project, and to hear from the three of you and other voices as well in there too. So thank you for that. I'm just going to have a quick look to see whether we've got any questions at the moment. I'm sort of quite pleased we haven't, because I'm going to ask one and then that will give people time. So I just, Rachel, obviously you've, I'm more familiar with your work with homeless communities. So that's the project that you did at the start of this journey, if you like. And I'm just interested to know whether there are any particular, I don't know if lessons is the right word, but things that you learned on that project, or experiences that you had that helped to shape this project, and then a follow-up, really, what you've learned from this project that might shape what you do next.
Yeah, that's a good question. In terms of how this project was shaped, I think it was really towards the end of my doctoral work, when I was still wandering around York and Bristol, but very aware that a lot of the people I was meeting, particularly in squats in Bristol, were labelled as failed asylum seekers, but actually, more correctly, their applications had been rejected by the Home Office. And in lots of those cases, people were faced with two options. One was to be deported back to a country which in several cases may well have killed them for being gay, or having done political activism, or religious beliefs, or to abscond. And so the people I met in those situations had absconded, but then of course they have no recourse to any public funds or housing or assistance or medical care. And so I started to think about where I had studied homelessness in the UK. I started to see it as just the domestic branch of displacement. It's people being shoved out of places. And so I finished that in 2014, and by 2015, I only wanted to work with people escaping from Syria, because it was just such an apparent massive problem, and the reception from my country was so awful. And it's been interesting in the academic word, and awful, to see the difference in the way that Syrians were greeted compared to Ukrainians. I felt quite uncomfortable with all the flag waving, and I feel like I want to raise a Syrian flag, except I don't really want to raise any flags. But I feel like, where are the Syrian flags? You know, where's the help for Syrians? I had various Syrian families that I would have loved to have brought to my house, but there was no scheme whereby I could have done that. And so I think this is what's driven me to think a lot more about nationalism and borders, and how dangerous those things are. And that's definitely come out in the people the people I am working with currently. I'm lucky enough that lots of the people who I spoke to hundreds of people in squats and camps and things, and the majority said, "Oh, it was really nice chatting with you, Rachel. I've got to go and do something now, bye." But some people like Hassan, Ala, Gunel, Ferrous, Dufla, and there are various others I can't name because they still don't have secure status, but various other people said, "Oh, this is actually really interesting. It gives me something else to think about," or I'm interested to tell the story. If it can help other people, I'd like to be involved. And so many of those people are very, very well educated and well read and thoughtful citizens of the world, and the only thing that stops them from fulfilling their potential is these colonial ideas about where you were born and who you are. And I feel very strongly that if our project can help to kind of spread the knowledge that many people who come to the UK or Sweden or Western Europe more broadly, they don't want to live here. They want to live in Iraq or Syria, but they can't. And so we're trying really hard to demonstrate that most people don't leave everything they've ever known without really seriously having no other option. In terms of where it's going, as I said, we're trying to get some more funding. Hassan and Ala would really like to host a larger version of our real life exhibition in Stockholm. So we've only just finished the project in London, so we're just taking a little break, and then going to try and start making contacts with museums or art centres in Stockholm to see if someone would host us and maybe co-apply for funding for us. And personally, I'm also very interested to look at second homes and Airbnb, because I grew up in Devon and I can't afford to live here. I mean, I do live here, but I basically live in a shed. This isn't my house. And it's largely to do with displacement of local people by empty second homes. So I'm quite interested to investigate where do local people go, because my experience is we go those of us who have parents with gardens with big sheds live in our parents' big sheds, and other people go and camp, literally camp at the campsite, and let their house to Airbnb to make money, because their jobs don't make enough money all year round for them to live off. And other people get forced out of where they're from, inland or to other towns and cities. So
yeah, it's been, and it will continue to be, a fascinating journey, Rachel. It's some really interesting ideas. We have got some more questions, so I'm going to go through those now. So we've got a question for Hassan and Ala. Would they be able to say something about what they've gained from being part of the project and working with the collective? Ala, do you want to go first? So what you've gained from being a part of the project and working with all these other people?
Can you hear us, Ala?
I think you met. Oh yeah. Okay, maybe struggling with the connection. Hassan, yeah. Can you hear us? Are you able to answer that
Yes,
question?
I hear you. And the question is what I get from to be part of this project.
Yeah, correct.
Yes, actually, we just share information and show other side of the truth that some people don't know, and I'm happy to show that because this project focused on many details that not shown in the media, in TV, the news. They focus on small things and forget many sides. And I was happy to share the full truth. And yes, and I was in London in the real expedition. And it was very fun to talk to many important people that want to know and ask many questions. This is what I get. There is nothing more.
Thank you very much, Hassan, for that response. Allah, can you hear us?
Hello, I can hear you.
So the question was, what have you gained from being a part of this project?
This is very important for me to expression about this very important like the war and refugees, like we are some refugees go from Syrian to Lebanon and Turkey and Greece and Sweden. That was a very tragedy, and I will try to expression about that big suffering that we are, and also this is my job, like a cartoonist, to draw about what happened in the world, and this is my responsibility about that big problem, you know.
Thank you, Allah. Very interesting. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Rachel, I think this might be a question for you. I think it's come up twice actually in the list, so I don't know if that's two separate people, but they're asking about the Museum of Homelessness and whether that museum is aware of this project and whether you've had any connection with them.
Yeah, I did have, I was in touch with, I don't know if they're aware of this project. They were aware of the homeless project, and so I was in touch with them. Those, I think getting in touch with more of the museums, and particularly Museum of Homelessness is one of those things on my list. yeah. I'm a big fan of their work though.
Yes, and there's a similar question actually from Anna about the Phosphorus Theatre, whether you've heard of the Phosphorus Theatre, who explore the lived experience of being a refugee through drama.
No, but I will look them up. Thank you for that.
Yes, and Anna provided a Facebook link, so I think it's just Phosphorus Theatre on Facebook, so you'll be able to find that fairly easily.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks Anna for that one. So the question, it's more of a comment really, and I suspect that a number of people might be thinking this at the moment. So this is from Beth, who worked at the Pitt Rivers Museum in an admin role when you were working on the Calais jungle, asking how she can support the work that you're doing. Is there anything
really
that
kind. Hello Beth, I remember you.
do to help and support with this work?
I guess getting people to engage with our online exhibition would be really helpful, and and we don't actually have a website that's specifically sort of Maiden migration. We do have various pages on things like Instagram, but we don't kind of keep up with them all that much. So if there was anyone, or if anyone fancied helping with promoting us on those platforms, I find them too much personally. I don't find them very healthy for my mental health. So I try to just do what we do, and we publish in different places, and like we're going to try and publish the cartoon and publish in academic places, but I find that you can just get completely consumed by social media, and also I find it's difficult to marshal, because on Twitter I've sometimes had some nasty racist stuff which I don't want my colleagues to see or be upset by or hurt by. So if there's anyone if there's any way of getting people to engage with our exhibition and then contacting us through that, if they wanted to do collaborative work, or indeed if there were any exhibition spaces where people would like us to take part in a similar project, or if there was a appetite for a kind of mixed media heritage festival, looking at bringing together all these different things, whether it's drama or heritage or archaeology, those are all ways to support us, I guess.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah. So we've got a question from Steve Roskins, who you'll remember from your time at York. So yeah, Steve, I'll read the question out. Immigrants threatened with deportation have been defended by local communities in Hackney, Edinburgh and Peckham. And this gives hope against state racism, and the people involved in these actions might provide further insights for the project. Aren't there dangers, however, in emphasising the qualifications of migrants? The unqualified are equally deserving of their chances.
They are. I think I'm in emphasizing people's qualifications in this particular group. I am specifically countering what until recently was a hardline kind of right-wing idea that these people coming over here taking our jobs, we don't know who they are, they're faceless, that whole kind of narrative required some complicating, and that's why I emphasize that many people who do come have lots of skills and are very willing to work. They're not able to, they're prevented from, they end up having to, like Hassan has ended up being a TV technician, which you won't mind me saying, Hassan, I think, but ideally you're much more qualified for a more kind of a higher paid IT role, and he was working in an insurance company. And well, you can speak, Hassan.
Yes, in Syria I worked many things, but in the end I worked with the organization of that control, or what you call it, compulsory insurance in Syria for 7 years as a customer service, not a big boss or something, but I was worked something like a bank or something. But when I get to Sweden, actually I started from zero or below zero. So I focused on my abilities in computer, and I had a few courses in computer and things in Syria, and I continue with this in Sweden. I started as a postman here. I worked as a postman 2.5 years. Then I get this work that I was still working here as a technician in general, solve many problems, not only TVs, but actually is not that high paid work. Is the basic, they give the basic. So I feel that I work in my age, in my knowledge about the IT, I should get better, but this take time. And the big problem here is the language. Because everything in Swedish, and I should speak fully Swedish. So all the customer understand me, even the customer that, some customers that from Malmo, they speak very hard Swedish. Sometimes I don't understand, especially on the phone. So who move from a country to another country, sadly, he will face that he will start from zero. 90%, 80%, I don't know. It depends on many things. And sadly, my friends in the camp, one of my friends, he was working as a teeth doctor that he make surgeries in Syria for many, many years. And here they didn't accept him to work as even a nurse in the teeth. So he had to start from zero, also learn Swedish, and then complete his doctor certificate or something.
Yeah, and I think the language thing in this country is so cruel, because when people arrive, they're not eligible for any kind of English lessons until they've been here 6 months. And then when they've been here 6 months, they're only eligible for English lessons if they can pay 50% of the course themselves. And so the proportion of people who can afford to learn English, unless they're going to day centres where volunteers are teaching English, it's very, very low. And then, of course, the narrative is they don't even learn English. But it's I especially as an English speaker, you know, I like Hassan and Allah, they speak to me in English, but they also speak Swedish and Arabic and bits of other languages. And I think if there's one thing I've really learned in terms of if I could, how I would improve things, it's number one, free English lessons from day dot. You know, he's sitting around in horrible barracks with nothing to do all day. You could at least be learning English or Swedish or German. I just think it's another barrier that's purposefully put in the way to make things difficult.
I can add many details about Sweden. Maybe this is about the UK. About Sweden, the government pay a lot of money to small companies that take care about to teach us the language. And actually, we can't start to get the language until we get our ID. That means we are officially in Sweden. We get asylum permanent or whatever. So and these companies take this money, and the government say in the statistic we paid for the refugees this amount of money, and these small schools or whatever, they made a lot of money and win a lot of money because they are in the companies that want to win money. It's not like to give money to a church that help to no, they make good money. And this I understand that actually after a few years after I came here, how this is processed. I thought everything is free and the government pay it, but then I understand the homes, there is a large money that go to the homes companies. Then they say, okay, we spend all this money on the refugees. Then, but me, I was shocked. Every refugee, how much it cost the government, but little amount come to us directly or indirectly. So I'm against that the government of any country here give money to companies to teach or take care about refugees. They should give the money to the government itself. The government itself should hire the teachers, hire the schools, and fix. Then they will reduce the amount. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Hassan. That's a really interesting insight as well on that. In response to that question, we are at 8 o'clock, so I'm going to sort of start to draw things to a close. But I want to begin just by thanking Rachel, Hassan, and Allah, and I know there are more of you as well, but you're the three who are here in front of us today. So thank you, all three of you, for such a fascinating presentation on a really important topic. I was going to say, Rachel, if you can do a 3-word answer, when's the book coming out?
Soon as I finish it.
That's more than 3 words, but okay, that'll do. Very good.
Soon. Soon.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. There is a poll. Those of you who've been to these lectures before may be familiar with this, that the CBA would like you to undertake, which there we are. It's there. It's right in front of you now. Won't take you very long. If you could do that, that would be great. I think it's really useful for the CBA to keep abreast of things and how these talks are going. And I just want to let you know about the next talk, which is on the 18th of August at 7 p.m. and it's by Barney Devine. And it's Quilca to Cleanish, Unlocking Rural Heritage for Positive Community Development. So do come along to that one as well. Indeed, all of the talks in this this excellent series that the CBA is putting on. So again, thanks to the speakers. Thanks very much, everybody, for turning up. Really good attendance.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Don't know what the usual attendance for these things is, but looks pretty good to me. So thanks very much. And I think at that point, I just shut my system down and everything comes to an end. I think that's what I've been told anyway. So thanks very much, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having us.